Greetings, gentle viewers, and welcome to yet another Roll Off a Tangent podcast. As usual, my colleagues are Nikita Zuev and XJ. I'm Robert Gibson, alias Sendexor. Tonight's offering is a discussion on Novice, published in 1962, the first tale in the renowned Telzey Amberdon saga by James H. Schmitz. Telzey, the novice of the title, is a beginner in the skills of xenotelepathy, hardly aware of her own powers when the story begins. She is a genius level law student, 15 years of age, vacationing on the world of Jontarou, one of the many settled worlds in the prosperous interstellar civilization known as the Federation of the Hub. The plot starts small. Telzey's vacation is part of a plan by her mother to get her to improve relations with her Aunt Halet, a nasty woman who is jealous of Telzey's superior talents. It turns out that Halet has her own plans to hurt Telzey by arranging for her mysterious pet to be confiscated by the government. The pet, named Tick-Tock because of its metronomic purr, is a huge pantherine creature which is now identified, thanks to Halet's research, as the last known member of a species called crest cats, believed to have been hunted to extinction on Jontarou. In such cases, the law demands that Tick-Tock, being a unique specimen, should be taken away to be preserved in suspended animation in the Federation's life banks. In order to save her pet from this fate, Telzey undertakes a battle of wits with her bitchy aunt and with the government official whom Halet has called in. However, the stakes are soon revealed to be much higher, nothing less than planetary crisis level. While occupied with opposing her aunt's machinations, Telzey also undergoes some startling experiences which show her that the emotional and mental bond she has with her pet is of far greater significance than she had previously realized. Telzey finds that she herself is actually a full-blown xenotelepath, as she now learns from the crest cats themselves, when they inform her that in reality they are far from extinct. Nor are they mere animals. They are intelligent beings, and though they didn't so much mind being hunted, they're such formidable fighters that on average they bag one human hunter for every crest cat that gets bagged. They won't stand for being captured for research purposes. So when universities began to do this, they went into hiding by using their chameleon-like ability to camouflage themselves perfectly. Now they explain that they'll give Telzey one chance to assert their rights to the authorities. The story reaches its climax at the planetary governor's mansion. The governor is naturally slow to believe Telzey's fantastic story and demands proof. She tells him she can give him proof, but that when he gets it, he'll have to act fast. She then says, now, and about 30 of the supposedly extinct crest cats de-camouflage themselves and suddenly appear all around. The governor keeps his nerve, fortunately, and opens a channel for negotiation with Federation HQ, thus avoiding a massacre. Right. So,
And then our protagonist mind washes her aunt.
Yes, I forgot that bit. That's a nice little touch at the end,
Yeah,
showing how ruthless Telzey can be.
definitely. Actually, what did you think about the story?
Okay, so when the environment in which we read a story, I think, probably contributes a lot to how we take the story. And I'm starting off with that because I read the Project Gutenberg version of the free book, right? And it starts off with this very beautiful illustration of Telzey and Tick-Tock, TT.
Right.
And it's, yes, it probably was scanned from that book then, and I love it because it's it brings me back to brings me back to that time when books had illustrations in them, and it's always awesome to find pieces of those drawings that gives a visual representation of what certain elements in the story are like. And I find like the very first picture was a great foreshadow and summary of what is to come next. And I think that is what a book illustration should do. It should tell you in a few words what you're about to experience. And so I started the story very excited. And I was like, oh, and unwrapped. And I was reading until I came to the name Tick-Tock. And then I was like completely taken out of it because goddamn Tick-Tock, why are you everywhere these days? Talking
Are you
about
talking about the app?
Yes. And then from then on, I don't know, some switch in my mind turned on, and then I can no longer put myself fully into it anymore. And then as I read further, like I think the reason why I'm going on this roundabout way to talk about how I feel is I'm very ambivalent about the story. Started off really good, even with the Tick-Tock stuff. And then when as I was reading, I started having like, this story reminds me of something. I was thinking, it's like Tarzan in space. You have some woman that is half wild, like Tarzan is, having a much deeper connection with the animals around him than the people around him. And of course, Aunt Halet is not a great specimen of the human race, and she wasn't a good representative, I feel. But nevertheless, it really did start to feel that way to me. And as I read further, the story just really fell apart for me in the middle. Just because it started to become really, like, I couldn't get past the Tarzan in space vibe, and it picked up again at the end when they had the council with Telzey and the crest cats, and then it became a little bit like Simba. And I was like, Jungle Book, yeah. And then it was like, I think those two connections in my mind just totally ruined the story for me. And there was one part at the end when everything is reviewed and there's the element of the xenotelepath got introduced, and I'm thinking to myself, this doesn't make sense. I would have figured that would have been I would have figured that would have made a much bigger played a much bigger role in the story, just because we're talking about a bunch of people who communicates with alien species, which we're talking about now being in the star traveling era with a contact with other races, species out in space who may or may not be very dangerous and powerful, posing a potential threat to the human race. And I would have thought diplomacy to be a very important part of the Federation, and the xenotelepaths are basically the only means they have to conduct diplomacy by. And the fact that it only got introduced as a small element towards the end of the story just struck me as very strange. And I suppose as an origin story, it reads like an origin story. It could work as things get expanded later on, but just on this story itself, it felt out of place to me. Aside from that, I feel that there are certain sections that really took me to that space adventure vibe. Stories of yonder years in the 80s with pew pew blasters with that little strange radar dish, that kind of feeling. That it did bring some of that nostalgic feeling back. So it's not a complete wash for me. But yeah, that is my verdict. Ambivalent.
All right. From ambivalency, let's see what Robert has to say. What's your opinion on the story?
I think reading a story like this, you have to let the author take and keep control. Read it like the author wants you to read it, because otherwise, there's really no point. The great virtues of these, well, the great virtue of these Federation of the Hub stories is that you get to feel the somewhat ramshackle interstellar background around you all the time. You get plonked into the giant setting, which is an example of how the sense of wonder of old science fiction evolved into the in the perhaps late 50s and early 60s into something new, which was not the feeling of how wonderful it is out there, but rather that the out there becomes part of one's own mental furniture, so that you actually feel like you're a citizen of the Federation of the Hub, and you identify with the many characters and their interactions over about 30 or so stories of varying lengths. And the whole thing is to me is completely wonderful. I think it's one of the most remarkable achievements in science fiction, and it's kind of artless art. That is to say, you really forget the author while you're reading it, and you get completely bewitched, as it were, into accepting the whole scene. That's how I read it anyway, and how probably the very large fan base that still exists for Schmitz's work will read it. That's one major point. The other major point comes out of this, which is that the phenomenon of being at home. The author is at home in his ramshackle interstellar civilization, and he makes the reader at home there. And one of his remarkable achievements is that, bearing in mind this was written in the early 60s, women's equality, social equality, is taken absolutely for granted. There's absolutely no need for any chip on the shoulder type feminism. Not the faintest echo of it survives in this far future civilization. And yet, at the same time, the the women in his stories, a lot of his heroes are heroines. The women are definitely real women. They're not just men in women's bodies like you have so often a sort of quota system. The author thinks, oh well, got to have a woman, in this role, so I'll call it a woman. Whereas psychologically they're indistinguishable from men, and functionally as well. Whereas in Schmitz, they are, as I say, real women, and yet they are also completely equal. I don't know how he does it, but he does. He achieves it. That's a great achievement. Nikki.
Let me just make a response to response to that. So first, I agree with you. Actually, the best written character in the story is probably Halet. Yeah,
she's a bitch.
She's very well written. She's written in a certain way to get you to feel like she is
like a real bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm asking.
Absolutely, she is the most well written character in the whole story. I feel even better than Telzey, which often is the case. The villain takes the limelight. The other thing I wanted to respond to what Rob had said is, I feel it would have worked a lot better, like that character with the Federation hub at the back of the mine as a backdrop and stuff like that. I think that would have worked a lot better if the character wasn't Telzey Amberdon and more like I can't remember the guy's name in George R.R. Martin's little short story that we did a while back.
Oh, you mean this tower of ashes?
Yes, this tower of ashes. The guy that hunts the dream spiders, and the reason, I can't remember the name offhand. The reason that would Johnny. The reason that character would have worked a lot better for me is that Johnny is essentially a very self-centered and selfish guy. The Federation or whatever the backdrop, the larger context of the culture would not matter to him, and therefore we won't see it in his mindscape or experiences. Telzey is different. Telzey is the daughter of a councilwoman. She is a 15-year-old lawyer in training. She is going on to greater heights. She is up there. She's not down here. She can't take you into the personal day-to-day. She's not the right, for me anyway, she's not the right vehicle to do that very homey kind of experience of the Federation hub. I think Johnny did that better as a protagonist. Okay, Nikki, over to you.
So I've had a completely different journey. I felt like the beginning of this tale was absolutely unbearable. And the more I read it, the more I was just like, really? We're still reading this? I mean, I guess we have to. Okay, let's keep going. It was a really long climb. But then I got to the heights of Mount Everest, and I got to see what was being unfolded in front of me, and I thought to myself, I guess I can forget some of these inconsistencies and ridiculous notions. I mean, this girl is going through like a psychotic awakening, right? Not like psychic awakening, but psychotic, because she literally goes psychotic. She talks about some really weird stuff. And she says to the guy at some point that she was gonna drink his blood or like have his blood or something to Dr. Droon or whatever his name was, right? So thinking back to that, as I was getting further and further into her mind, I'm thinking she's probably having a mental breakdown. So let's just take those pages that I read before as like a woman during a mental breakdown, and I think it's okay. And then we got to the Iron Thought, and how
cool is that name? Really,
that is such a cool name.
Yeah,
right. So as soon as I heard Iron Thought, I was like, okay, all right, All right, Mr. Schmitz, I'm ready to read more. What's going on here? And then I got to the reason I'm telling you all this is because like we heard XJ's journey, and I thought it would be interesting to contrast as to how I got and where I got. And when we were shown the planetary governor, so to speak, and how the girl began reasoning her way through. Now I know there are 12 other stories, or however many stories about this woman, but to me it kind of felt like this is no longer the weird psychotic woman talking. This is the pride. This is the invisible saber-tooth people talking through her. She's making way too much sense comparatively to how crazy she was before. So she has been either really influenced by these animals, or the animals have kind of taken over her mind. And she sort of resolves everything bloodless in a way, which makes her sound like a good person. And just to make sure that we know that she isn't, Schmitz at the end puts that she brainwashes her aunt into being an obedient little puppet, and then she, as a god now, this girl of 15 years of age decides, well, she can have some of her old traits back, I guess. That will make her a little bit better, I guess. Like this girl of 15 years of age playing god with this woman. And I thought to myself, holy moly, I really hope that all of the subsequent stories are of her becoming basically Darth Vader, right? She destroys the universe, because this is really dangerous powers. Can you imagine? You come up to somebody and you go like, yeah, this aspect of you is not so great. This aspect of you is alright, I guess. We amplify this, we divide that. You're a new person. Bob's your uncle. Like, oh god. Shoot to kill if I ever see her. So I like the story at the end, but it was a fight. It was definitely a fight for me to like it.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to say the last bit struck me as really Machiavellian. It was like,
I don't know if he was trying to play it for laughs or something, but if you really think about it, it's like a crime. And she even talks about well, I'm kind of doing everything legally because there's no law about this. But really,
she's a lawyer, and I was thinking to myself, she is probably, in the rest of the stories, I haven't read any of this Telzey Amberdon. It's quite new to me, but at that point when I reached the end, I was thinking to myself, this woman is probably going to abuse this power all the time, like all the goddamn time in the rest of the story. And I'm like, this is a heroine, but really deep down, she's just a hair's breadth away, a legal line away from being a criminal.
Sure, I think she. Again, I want to read more stories just to see if I'm right or wrong. I'm probably wrong, and this is all being played for laughs. But if you stop for a second and think about what she's done. All right, Robert looks like he's about to say something. I'm all ears. What do you think?
Making a point about the Federation of the Hub series as a whole, there's a lot of hints that, well, in one sense it's a military power. There is such a thing as the Federation Navy, but also the many enemies that surround the Federation, many alien enemies that surround it, come to realize that there's more to the Federation than that. That they, in one of the stories called the Tuvela, it's a novel actually, the aliens try and take over one of the worlds of the Federation, and they get beaten not by the official forces, but by one again, a heroine, a woman not with any paranormal powers, but she just beats the aliens basically by bluffing them. And the conclusion is that the aliens meet afterwards and do a post-mortem on their failed operation, and they realize that whether or not this woman had the powers that she claimed, in fact she didn't, she was bluffing. The fact that she succeeded shows that it's not a good idea to attack the Federation, because it's in effect a biological fortress, guarded by its human resources, the initiative of its humans. And I think to uh, to exonerate Telzey and her kind in a way, the Federation needs people like that to defend it, because it's a hard universe and full of dangers. And one of the novels, The Lion Game, has Telzey, slightly older, a year or two older, defeating a very serious menace. It's a gripping novel. Anyway,
sorry.
Go on.
There's a point that a lot of philosophers bring up, the idea of necessary evil. Right, in a world of goodness, there must be a necessary evil. Otherwise, there is no way to sustain a paradise. And that's a lot of people in power use this justification, to create reasoning for their monstrable acts and decisions. Right? It's like, well, lesser of two evils, or this is the necessary evil that we must do, and so on and so forth. So it's interesting that you bring up this this point, because I think on a certain level, the idea that sometimes you have to do things that are not necessarily humane or moral, in order to continue existence of the human race, is a no-brainer, right? Sometimes hard decisions have to be made, because sometimes you're choosing from a bad decision and another bad decision, right? But at the same time, I don't know, she's like, she does, this aunt matters very little. This is like just a personal crime, right? It's like, ooh, come on. Who was she hurting besides herself, being so stupid and angry? I think, at least to me, it seems to me that this is sort of this witty, strange humor from the 60s and 70s, which had a really sinister undertone, which wasn't really meant as a sinister undertone. At least that's what it strikes us to me. Like, I don't think Schmitz meant for that moment to be as horrifying as it was for me, because he seems to make this lawyer girl Telzey into a protagonist, into a person we want to cheer for. And to me, it's sort of like, well, look, yet another thing that she can do, make bad people good with her powers, right, or something. Like, I don't know if this was trying to tell us that, like, this is a more of a gray situation, but maybe it was, right? I'm not sure. I get the feeling that at least when I read this last week, for the podcast, to me it felt super out of left field. It felt awesome, because I like my characters not being the best of people. I think it makes them more interesting. But at the same time, I'm not quite sure that it was meant to be horrifying. Let's put it that way.
My guess, just my guess, is it's just meant to lay the ground for future Telzey novels, and give a origin for her telepathic powers that is a little bit more than her fellow telepaths, and also probably a light-hearted way to wrap up the story. I feel that is the intention. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's a it's a pretty. I mean, I do like just how Machiavellian that is, but I don't think Mr. Schmitz would have appreciated that take.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I like the story. I think, in my opinion, it could use a rewrite at the beginning. I think the beginning really drags it down, and if everything was as good as the second part for me again, I think that this work would be discussed akin to something the likes of Conan, because there is definitely a lot of potential in this work. I don't know how the other short stories are, but at least this one, it's really promising. But if I was, an editor or just an avid reader who got to beta test such a work, I would, my notes would be work on that first part, make it bearable so we can get to the good stuff.
So how would you make the first part better?
Okay, well, I knew this was coming. So, the avertness of what's happening to our protagonist is really vague, strange, and incoherent. And I think that the first couple of pages, that's fine. But we need to get some sort of a bearing on what's going on in some way, shape, or form, so that you are interested in what's going to happen next. Because if it's constantly confusing, then it's just confusing. It's not intriguing, it's just confusing, right? And for me, that's how I felt, kind of. I felt as confused as Telzey, and at some point, that just gets annoying. Like, I want to read a story, and I want to consume, a product that will in some way, shape, or form entertain me. I'm confused at work all the time. I don't need it in my fiction. Like, I know how to be confused. That's not a problem. I don't need to be taught that skill. However, if we are looking for specifics, I would start it with already Telzey talking to the doctor, and her being like, "I'm super mad at my aunt. She has put me into this situation. I don't really know what to do. This is getting me really angry. She's got these spouts of strange stuff, and when she goes to her room, that's the first contact, proper contact that she gets from these creatures. So she goes from thinking like a lawyer, like thinking, because this is honestly, this is the point that really made me upset about the story, because it literally tells us how a human being would solve the situation, right? Telzey's like, oh yeah, I could drag this in course for like 15 years and they would never be able to take Tick-Tock, but I'm gonna do this leap of faith anyway and go somewhere else. Like, she has no reason to do that besides being crazy, right? So you focus on that moment. You see at first that she's thinking through this, and then these voices come to her head, and she doesn't understand it, but the voices are too strong, they're too powerful, and she stops thinking like a human, and she goes on this journey. And then it makes sense for me. Then I'm like, okay, oh my god, these strange creatures are kidnapping this girl. What's happening?
So from what I'm gathering, what's not working for you is the way Telzey comes into her power. It's not written in a compelling manner, like her awakening of her psychic powers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of just basic logical issues that arise from the way it's written.
I mean, that's not the only logical issues throughout the story, to be honest. Yeah.
Sure, but I'm just saying, the beginning has to grip you. Then you ignore all of the logical inconsistencies.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. That's very interesting. Yeah. So, Rob, I gather for you the story is perfect and there's nothing that needs to be changed.
Well, it's not written by Clark Ashton Smith, so it can't be perfect.
That's
think
true.
It's more or less perfect in its own terms. I would say that you have to read it, in the spirit it's meant to be read with. But that's true of any story. I just want to say one detail. I think it was Nikki who said referred to when Telzey says, "Yari, I'll drink your blood," all of a sudden. Now that to me, I didn't have to think about that. I could straight away see that was a stray thought from the crest cats, which had dominated her mind at that particular moment. It was nothing to do with Telzey being crazy at all.
Well, her
In fact,
being hold on,
blinked
I'm
afterwards.
misconstruing my words. I meant to say that she's going crazy because there's cats talking in her head. I'm not saying that she is herself mentally ill, right?
All right.
Although having said that, it didn't help that Schmitz, or rather, it helped to create that impression, because Schmitz implied that within her family there is mental instability right at the beginning. I do.
Well, Halet thinks so.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you meant to believe Aunt Halet's verdict.
Who knows? Because when we start the story, we are babies. We are all innocent toddlers, and we believe what the author tells us.
So you said that there had to be a right way to read the story. Once again, we're at this juncture. So tell me, what is the right way to read the novice? Or novice, I think it's just called, sorry.
I think
what mindset do I have to be in?
The only way to answer that would take hours and hours, because it would mean going through it word by word, sentence by sentence, and narrating not just the story, but the associations conjured up by the story.
You're
so
doing it so wrong, Nikki.
You'd have to have an advanced culture in which one would record one's thoughts as one was reading the story, and then I could spool these thoughts out and give them to you, and you could put them in your
I feel I want to clarify something. Actually, I think when Robert said hours and hours, he meant you. For me, it will take weeks and months.
Okay,
comparatively.
Fair enough.
So I feel like you're in the analogy that I would give after what Robert has said is like, so you're saying to me that you would have to be a mother bird who chews all of the food and then regurgitate it into its young. That is the only way that you could enforce the way this story should be read, or any story. You're saying that's the only way.
I have an idea.
Oh no, let Rob answer. I want to hear.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I've gone through this before. I think there's an asymmetry, a complete asymmetry in the issue of if there's a debate between someone who doesn't like, let's be extreme, someone who doesn't like a story and someone who does like the story, the one who does like the story, it's no good just trying to split the difference and say, all right, well, the truth is somewhere midway between the two. It's not an analog thing, it's more of a digital thing, and that it's got to be either one or the other. And it seems to me that the positive always trumps the negative, simply because whereas you can say, oh, somebody's missing out on this enjoyment, you can't say that somebody who's enjoying a story is missing out on the non-enjoyment. Do you see what I mean?
I see. Okay, how do you enjoy the snows of Kilimanjaro?
Well, one would have to be someone who's better at reading it than I was. I didn't enjoy it, but I know if it only takes one person to enjoy it to prove that it can be enjoyed.
Sorry, I had to make that joke. Robert, can I tell you? I'll tell you how to enjoy the snows of Kilimanjaro. Half a half a bottle
Of
some
vodka?
nice whiskey. Vodka, what's it called? Would not help in this situation. You have to, you have to enjoy yourself to drink vodka. You're not enjoying yourself if you're gonna be reading the Snows of Kilimanjaro. Look, I submit to you that perhaps in this infinite universe of possibilities, there's a way to enjoy every story that you read. But that does not mean that you should. Just because the possibility exists doesn't mean that you have to strive towards it. And it's okay not to like a story. It is not an issue that somebody doesn't like a story or have read it the wrong way, as you put it. Which I just simply disagree with the way that's phrased, right? But we can, we had the discussion before. I think it's fruitless.
Yeah.
To
Well, you
go through
don't
it
have
now.
to enjoy. You can't. There's not time to enjoy every story anyway.
I'm just saying that there's even a certain enjoyment in not enjoying something, and that comes from tearing it apart and telling people exactly why I didn't like it and having a conversation with them. Think about that, right? So somebody a law comes in power. It is enforced upon every person, and they're upset about it. It's of course there's also the point that we need to change the law or whatever. But one of the ways that people let off some steam is that they go to somebody and they complain about how they don't like this law and how it's shitty and how this politician and this politicians they're all full of crap. And this way, the person gets to enjoy the situation, even though the situation itself makes him upset, right? And it's the same way that you could take a story and you could just not enjoy it at all, but at least you could talk to two very intellectual and interesting people and tell them why you don't like it and how could it be better and so on and so forth. You see what I mean?
That's fair enough. The discussions tend to be, for me, better than reading the story, to be honest, because there really is a lot of something really vital missing when we suffer a story or enjoy a story in solitude. I do think.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And discussion is born for difference of opinion. Of course, there could be differences of opinion that I like this part of it, and then I liked it because of this reason, or I like it. But I mean, that's a utopia,
However,
different anyway. About you were saying, Nikki, that I think it was you, or was it XJ, saying that you were confused about part of the story. Now, I noticed that you weren't confused by the story we had recently, Two Kinds of Fool. You weren't confused at all. Now I spent
it's a great story. There's not much to be confused about.
Confused. I was totally confused by that story. I couldn't tell what the heck was going on. So obviously, there's people are so different in what they can be confused by. Whereas nothing in this story confused me at all.
I'm very surprised by that statement that Two Kinds of Fool confused you, which I'm sure is the same way you thought when I said.
No, actually, I can see that. It's a little bit like if you're like for me, there's certain how do I put this? Like if you're not used to a fast-paced, action-packed story, it could very well be confusing because too much things are happening. There's too much jump cuts and going to other characters' point of view and stuff like that. I can totally see that. Yeah.
You mean it's too fast paced for the reader?
I don't know if that is what made Robert.
No, but your explanation.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
Some shows could be too fast. I do remember there are some shows that really push the limits on fast cuts, and sometimes I get lost. Yeah, it's because I don't
know. I don't know that it's the pace was what confused me. It was Even now, I don't know what the two kinds of fool were. I just don't know what
The
they
one that
were.
follows rules and the one who disobeys them.
Really? I
Right.
didn't know
Well,
that.
when you put it that way, it seems quite clear. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because there is Sicarius, who used to be the fool that would not, obey any order, and he would do things his own way. And then there's the captain of the first company, who is the reverse. And they change roles in the story because of the circumstances that they put in, and they get to put aside their differences at the end, realizing that sometimes you have to do things the different way.
Okay,
Right,
well
right.
that was completely lost on me.
Hmm.
I'm not surprised.
I am not at all ashamed to admit flew over my head.
I mean, you shouldn't be ashamed. Why should you be?
Yeah, totally flew over my head.
But that's I think we got away from the novice a little bit. I constantly call it the novice, although I know it's novice. See, Robert is rubbing off on me. I'm putting theirs where they are not meant to be.
Well, you say the lost hearts as well, whereas in fact it's just lost hearts.
Right.
Yeah.
You see what the English language is doing to my brain?
Well, you're still about 2.7 trillion times better at English than I am at Russian, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, where was I? Oh yeah. One of the most interesting aspects of the story to me comes obviously at the third part, the only part I enjoyed. And it was the fact that the governor and the way Telzey interacts with him is very fascinating, because their conversation is very realistic and quite gripping, and it got me thinking about a different discussion that we have seen before in one of the other works. If you recall even the story called The Hero by George R. R. Martin, there's this moment where the protagonist, who is the hero of the story, is sort of stopped by these tractor beams, and he talks to / is interrogated by his superior. And I think something from there was missing that wasn't missing here. In the novice, this discussion between these two individuals, it felt so real to me. Like I could see it. I could understand where both of these points of view are coming from. And when the big reveal comes with all of these cats, unmorphing from their invisibility cloaks and just standing over there, I could imagine, because the situation has been so realistic so far, how this planetary guy would react. And what was interesting to me was I wasn't upset about the fact that I knew what was coming, because it felt so real. Usually when I read something and I know something's coming, it makes me angry. It makes me upset, right? Well, I mean, maybe those are too strong of words, but it feels bland in that case, because I'm like, well, I know how this will respond. This person will respond. I know how this situation will end, and so on and so forth. But here, even though I knew what his reaction is gonna be after seeing all those 30 cats, it didn't create any displeasure for me. And that, I can't really describe it. I don't really understand it fully yet. Why it didn't create this emotion, even though I knew it was coming. Yeah.
Well, dramatic irony has to work that way. You have to know more than the protagonist, because otherwise, it doesn't work. So, anyway.
Right, but a lot of time when a plot point can be seen a mile away, it creates an annoyance rather than the desired effect of dramatic irony. So I guess what I'm saying is, if we can learn anything from Mr. Schmitz, is that is to create interesting, realistic tension in situations that may even feel that they have already been resolved in our minds because we think we know how they will continue and how they will end.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean,
Well,
I don't have that much else to say about the story, I must say.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
recommend,
Oh, wait. Robert was going to say something.
yeah, I was just recommend that everybody gives the story a chance who's listening to the podcast, and also all the other Schmitz Federation of the Hub stories as well, because there's a vast number of them. There's about 500,000 words altogether in the saga,
Oh,
filling about 4 large volumes of stories. And
man could write.
It's a real feast.
I did actually research the man himself. So he was German. I mean, come on, Schmitz. And he was born in Hamburg, but his family was Americanized in some way, shape, or form. And he went and he studied in in America, and then came back to Germany to work in his father's company. And then World War II started, and he went back to America again. And then his brother and he worked at a company that created trucks. And throughout all that time, he was writing stuff. But sort of as a novice, if you might add, because the company dissolved in 1949, and after that is when he truly started working on his craft. But it fascinates me that we find yet another author whose story and whose history is just as interesting, or in Hemingway's situation, way more interesting than the stuff he wrote. I think I'm gonna get killed by like a Hemingway supporter of all these jabs. I must admit, I am scared for my life.
It's the mystery why Schmitz stopped writing in the last decade of his life. It's like Eric Frank Russell just stopped writing, and we don't know why, which is a shame.
Well, his wife survived him. Was there never interviews or books written from her perspective what was going on?
No, I don't know.
Maybe we could research that.
You probably know more than I do now.
Well, I gotta say, I am one of those very strange people who take zero interest in the creator's life. I like the story, and that's all I want from the creator, and I am just not at all interested in his background or his life. I don't know why. Anyway, we're coming up to an hour, so any last words?
6 out of 10. Would recommend. I would just suggest some nice beverage or a food that you like for the beginning, so you can get through it.
So, Robert, what about you? 10 out of 10?
I'd give it at least 10 out of 10, yeah.
At least.
God, you and your mathematics. I thought last episode you got me upset. Now you done it again.
Especially the beginning. I think that's really
You just stabbed me, and now you're really wriggling that dagger. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Especially the beginning.
As for me, as I said, I'm ambivalent, so it's 5 out of 10. Could swing either way.
5 out of 10.
5 out of 10.
Okay. 5, 6, and 10.
10. Yeah. There we go. Verdict on the novice. Short
A
story.
novice verdict on the novice.
A novice verdict on the novice.
right. I say ambivalent myself, but anyway.
Okay. So, I guess that's our discussion for this week.
Thank you everybody for listening.
All right, yeah. Like and subscribe and all that stuff if you enjoyed the podcast, and See you all. Have a great day.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.